Samuel Harmon came home early that day. He opened the door and froze. His 6-month-old son, the baby doctor swore was born blind, was staring directly at the new housekeeper's face and smiling. Samuel's briefcase hit the floor. How was that possible? 6 months earlier, Samuel's world ended in a San Francisco hospital. His wife, Victoria, died 3 hours after giving birth. He held her hand as the light left her eyes while their newborn cried down the hall. 6 weeks later, Dr. Helena Crane told him, "Your son's optic nerves didn't develop. He's blind permanently." Samuel tried everything. Lights, sounds, toys. Nothing worked. Jordan never looked at him, never reached out, never responded. The house became a grave. Staff whispered. 3 housekeepers quit. Then Angela Harris walked through the gates. 28, orphaned, invisible her whole life. On her 5th day, she touched Jordan's hand. He held on. Over 2 weeks, she watched him. When she hummed, his head turned. When sunlight moved, his eyes followed. Then she found the bottle. Opticom solution for optic nerve sedation. Her blood froze. Someone was keeping this baby blind on purpose. 3 days ago, during Jordan's bath, he looked at Angela and smiled. His hand touched her cheek. That's when Samuel walked in. He saw everything. What they discovered that night shattered everything he believed. And the person responsible was closer than he ever imagined. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Because sometimes, when we think God has forgotten us, He's already sent someone who refuses to look away. 3 years ago, Samuel Harmon stood in an empty room with paint swatches in his hand and his wife laughing beside him. "Blue or yellow?" he asked. Victoria pressed her palm against her belly. "Both? Our son deserves a room full of light." They painted it together. Soft blues, warm yellows, colors their baby would wake up to every single morning. That was the dream. 6 months ago, the dream died. Victoria went into labor on a Tuesday. Everything was fine until it wasn't. 3 hours after Jordan was born, she started hemorrhaging. Samuel held her hand while doctors tried to stop the bleeding. They couldn't. He kissed her forehead, told her he loved her, and felt her fingers go cold in his. Their son was 3 hours old when Samuel became a widow. For 6 weeks, he tried to survive it. Bottles at 2 a.m., diaper changes, rocking Jordan when he cried. He'd stand in that painted nursery, holding his son, whispering, "We're going to be okay." Then Dr. Helena Crane shattered him. "Your son is blind," she said. "His optic nerves didn't develop. It's permanent." Samuel stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means he'll never see. Not you, not light, not anything." He went home and tried everything. Toys that glowed, rattles that played music. He'd wave them in front of Jordan's face, desperate for just one flicker of recognition. Nothing. Jordan's eyes stayed empty. His body stayed still. And every night, Samuel knelt beside the crib and broke a little more. The house died with him. Curtains stayed closed. Staff whispered like they were at a funeral. 3 housekeepers couldn't take it. They quit without explanation. Samuel stopped going to work, stopped answering his phone. Some mornings he'd sit in the nursery for hours, staring at the blues and yellows Victoria had loved, wondering why God gave him a son who'd never see them. Late one night, he stood at Jordan's crib and whispered, "I don't know how to do this without her." Jordan didn't move. Samuel's voice cracked. "You're all I have left, but you don't even know I'm here." That's when Mr. Chen knocked softly on the door. "Sir, the new housekeeper arrives tomorrow." Samuel didn't turn around. "Fine. She's the 4th one in 4 months. I told her what to expect." Samuel nodded, still staring at his son. What he didn't know was that this housekeeper would be different. She wouldn't quit, she wouldn't look away, and she'd see what no one else had seen. Angela Harris stepped out of the rideshare and stared up at the gates. Fog rolled in from the hills, swallowing the estate like it was trying to hide something. She pulled her jacket tighter, gripped her worn canvas bag, and told herself the same thing she'd been saying for 3 weeks. Just work. Just disappear. 28 years old, and she'd been disappearing her whole life. Foster care taught her that. 18 different homes before she aged out at 18, with nothing but a high school diploma and a deep, bone-tired loneliness she couldn't shake. She spent the next 10 years cleaning hotel rooms at 4 a.m., scrubbing office floors after everyone went home, folding other people's laundry in houses where no one knew her name. Invisible work, invisible life. When she saw the ad, live-in housekeeper, remote estate, generous pay, private quarters, she didn't ask questions. She just said yes, because sometimes you don't run towards something, you just run. Mr. Chen opened the gates without a word. No smile, no welcome, just a stiff nod and a wave to follow. Inside, the house was spotless. Floors shined like glass. Furniture sat perfect and untouched, but the air felt wrong. Too still, too quiet, like the whole place was holding its breath. He walked her through room after room, kitchen, living room, hallways that echoed with every step. Then she saw the photos on the wall, a woman with dark hair and bright eyes, laughing. The same woman holding a newborn, her face glowing with a kind of joy Angela had only ever seen from a distance. Her chest tightened. "That's Mrs. Harmon," Mr. Chen said flatly. "She passed 6 months ago." Angela nodded, but she couldn't stop staring at the woman's smile. "Mr. Harmon doesn't like noise," Mr. Chen continued. "He keeps to himself. Do your work, stay out of his way." "Understood." He showed her to a small room off the kitchen. A bed, a window overlooking fog-covered hills. Nothing else. "You start tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Angela set her bag down and nodded. When he left, she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the bare walls. This was supposed to be a place to forget, a place to work and stay quiet and let the world move on without her. But something about this house felt different. She lay back, listened to the wind hum against the glass, and closed her eyes. Somewhere down the hall she heard it, faint, almost like a whisper, a baby crying. Then silence. Angela opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling. What kind of grief, she thought, turns a house into a tomb? She didn't know yet, but she was about to find out. Angela's 5th morning started like the others. She woke at 5:45 a.m., made her bed, and moved through the house like a ghost, dusting shelves no one touched, folding towels no one used. The work was easy. The silence was not. She hadn't seen Mr. Harmon once. He left early, came back late, if he came back at all. The only proof he existed was the untouched plate of food the cook left on the counter each night. Around mid-morning, Angela was dusting the living room when she heard footsteps. Mr. Chen walked past, carrying a bundle wrapped in a soft blue blanket. He set it down on a padded mat near the window, adjusted the edges, and turned to leave. That's when Angela saw a baby, 6 months old maybe, blonde hair catching the light, lying perfectly still. She froze, cloth in hand. Mr. Chen noticed her staring. "That's Jordan," he said, "Mr. Harmon's son." Angela's throat tightened. "He's so quiet." "He's blind." Mr. Chen's voice was flat, like he'd said it 100 times. "Can't see, can't hear properly. His brain doesn't process things the way it should." Angela looked at the baby. His eyes were open, blue, clear, but fixed on nothing. "Don't bother talking to him," Mr. Chen added. "He doesn't respond. Best to just leave him be." He walked out. Angela stood there, staring at Jordan. At 6 months, babies grabbed things, babbled, smiled at faces. This child lay motionless, like the world had forgotten to wake him up. She should have gone back to dusting, should have followed the rules, but something pulled her forward. She knelt beside him, lowering herself slowly. "Hi, sweetheart," she whispered. Nothing. She reached out, hesitated, then gently touched his hand. His fingers twitched. Angela's breath caught. She waited, heart pounding, then stroked his palm again, soft, deliberate. This time, his hand didn't just twitch, it curled.
his tiny fingers wrapped around her thumb, holding on. Angela froze, staring at their hands. His grip was weak, fragile, but it was there, real, intentional. "You felt that," she whispered, "didn't you?" Jordan didn't move, didn't look at her, but his fingers stayed wrapped around hers. Angela glanced toward the hallway, listened. No one was coming. She stayed there for a long moment, watching him, his chest rising and falling, his hand holding hers. This isn't random, she thought. This is awareness. She'd spent her whole life reading people, learning to see what they didn't say, what they tried to hide. She knew the difference between a reflex and a response. This was a response. Slowly, she pulled her hand back. Jordan's fingers opened, empty again. Angela stood, heart racing. She wanted to call someone, tell them, but who would believe her? Mr. Chen had been clear. Jordan didn't respond. The doctors had been clear. He was blind. No one would listen to a housekeeper who'd been here 5 days. But she would watch. Over the next 2 weeks, Angela became a shadow in that house, cleaning, folding, moving quietly through rooms. And every chance she got, she watched Jordan. What she saw would change everything. For 2 weeks, Angela moved through that house like she was invisible. She folded laundry, washed dishes, wiped down counters, but every moment she could, she watched Jordan, and she saw things no one else was seeing. One afternoon, while folding sheets in the nursery, she started humming, soft, barely a sound. Jordan's head turned. Not much, just a slight tilt toward her voice. Angela stopped humming. His head stayed still. She started again. He turned toward her. Her pulse quickened. Another day, sunlight broke through the fog and spilled across the nursery wall. Angela was changing Jordan's blanket when she noticed his eyes tracking the light as it moved. She froze, watched. The beam shifted. His eyes followed. She grabbed a bright yellow toy from the shelf, held it in front of him, moved it slowly left to right. His eyes tracked it.
"Oh my God," she whispered. She glanced at the door. No one was there. No one had seen it. The contrast was brutal. When Mr. Chen was in the room, Jordan lay still, vacant, unreachable. When the nurse checked on him, nothing, no response. But when Angela was alone with him, when no one was watching, he came alive. Small movements, tiny responses, but they were real. At night, Angela would lie in her small room staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. Why doesn't anyone else see it? She pulled out her phone one night and searched. Misdiagnosed blindness in infants. Articles filled the screen. Conditions that mimicked blindness, delayed responses, overstimulation, neurological issues. But something deeper nagged at her. She kept searching. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard before she typed, "Keeping babies sick on purpose." The results made her stomach turn. Munchausen by proxy. Caretakers who harmed children to get attention, doctors who saw what they wanted to see, cases where babies were kept sedated, kept sick, kept dependent. Angela closed her phone and pressed her hands against her face. No, that's insane. That doesn't happen in houses like this. But she couldn't shake it. Why would a 6-month-old respond to light and sound when no one was watching, but appear completely blind when others were around? What was she missing? She pulled out a small notebook from her bag and started writing. Every observation, every response, every time Jordan reacted when he wasn't supposed to. The evidence was adding up. But evidence wasn't enough. She needed proof, something undeniable, something that would make people believe her. The next morning, while cleaning Jordan's room, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Mr. Chen walked in carrying a small glass bottle. He tilted Jordan's head back and squeezed 2 drops into each eye. Then he left without a word. Angela stared at the bottle sitting on the silver tray. She'd never been told about any medication, never heard anyone mention it. Her hands trembled as she picked it up, and what she read on that label changed everything. Angela waited until Mr. Chen left the room. Then she walked over to the silver tray and picked up the bottle. The label was worn, scratched in places, but she could still read it. Optic solution 0.3% for optic nerve sedation in post-surgical patients. Caution, not approved for pediatric use under 2 years. Her hands started shaking. Sedation, not treatment, not therapy, sedation. She turned the bottle over. At the bottom, faded letters, EXP, August 2024. It had expired before Jordan was even born. Angela set the bottle down carefully, like it might explode. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. That night, she sat on her bed with her phone, searching every word on that label. Optic calm, optic nerve sedation, pediatric side effects. The results made her stomach drop. The medication was designed for adults recovering from eye surgery, patients with extreme light sensitivity. It temporarily suppressed visual response to prevent pain. In infants, the side effects were clear: delayed pupil response, reduced light perception, sluggish motor function, temporary visual impairment. Angela read it 3 times. Then she opened her notebook and started writing everything down. Over the next week, she tracked every single moment. 8 a.m., Mr. Chen gives Jordan the drops. 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m., Jordan completely unresponsive, eyes glassy, body limp like a doll. 3 p.m., small movements start, a finger twitch, a blink. 5 p.m., eyes tracking light, head turning towards sound. 6:30 p.m., reaching for objects, responding to touch. 7:30 p.m., bedtime. The pattern was undeniable. Every morning the drops went in. Every morning Jordan disappeared. And every evening as the medication wore off, he came back to life. But only when no one was watching. Angela pressed her pen against the page, hands trembling. Someone was keeping this baby blind on purpose. But who and why? Dr. Crane had diagnosed him. Mr. Chen administered the drops. Mr. Harmon believed his son was hopeless. None of them were seeing what she was seeing. Or maybe they didn't want to see. Angela closed the notebook and hid it under her pillow. If she spoke up now, they'd call her crazy, fire her, maybe worse. But she had no proof anyone would believe. Just a housekeeper's observations and a medication bottle. But she couldn't stay silent, not when a baby's life was being stolen 1 drop at a time. 3 days later, Angela made a decision. She was going to give Jordan his bath, and she was going to see, really see, if he could respond without the medication clouding his system. It was late afternoon. The drops had been wearing off for hours. She filled the small tub with warm water, tested the temperature, and gently lowered Jordan in. What happened next would shatter everything. 3 days ago, late afternoon light poured through the living room windows. Angela set the small white bath on the table, filled it with warm water, and tested the temperature twice. Mr. Chen was running errands. The cook had left early. The house was quiet. It had been 7 hours since Jordan's morning drops. Angela lifted him gently, cradling his head. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered, "just you and me." She lowered him into the water. He didn't flinch, didn't cry, just lay there, calm. She took the soft sponge, dipped it in the water, and began washing his arms, his chest, his tiny shoulders. Then she lifted the sponge to his forehead. A few bubbles slid down toward his eye. Jordan blinked. Angela froze. She dipped the sponge again. More foam. It rolled down his cheek. He blinked on purpose. Her hands started shaking. "You can feel it," she whispered. "Can't you?" Then Jordan did something that stopped her heart. He turned his face toward her, and his eyes, those blue eyes everyone said were empty, locked onto hers. He wasn't looking through her. He was looking at her. And then he smiled. Not a random twitch, a real smile, full of light, full of life. Angela's breath caught. Tears filled her eyes. Jordan's tiny hand lifted out of the water, trembling, reaching. His wet fingers touched her cheek. "Hi there, sweetheart," she whispered, voice breaking. "You can see me. You've always been able to see me." That's when she heard it, a sound behind her. She turned, Samuel Harmon stood in the doorway, briefcase still in his hand, frozen. He'd seen everything. Time stopped. Angela couldn't move, couldn't speak. Samuel's eyes were locked on his son. Jordan turned toward the sound of his father's voice. His head moved, his eyes searched, and then they found him. Father and son looked at each other for the first time in 6 months. Samuel's briefcase hit the floor. He stumbled forward, legs barely holding him.
He fell to his knees beside the bath, not caring that water soaked through his suit. "Jordan," his voice cracked. You can see me." Jordan stared at his father's face and smiled. Samuel's hands shook as he reached into the water. Jordan's tiny, wet fingers wrapped around his father's thumb. "Oh, God," Samuel whispered. "Oh, my God." 6 months of grief broke open. Tears poured down his face, silent, uncontrollable. "You can see me," he sobbed. "You've always been able to see me." He pulled Jordan out of the water, held him against his chest, both of them soaking wet, both of them crying. Angela stood back, tears streaming down her own face. Samuel looked at her over Jordan's shoulder. His eyes were wild, confused, desperate, shattered. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" Angela's voice was soft but urgent. "Mr. Harmon, I need to show you something." She pulled the small bottle from her pocket, and everything Samuel thought he knew was about to burn to the ground. Samuel sat on the floor, still holding Jordan, water pooling around them. He couldn't stop staring at his son's face. Every blink, every tiny movement, real, alive, seeing. Angela knelt beside him and held out the bottle. "This is what Mr. Chen has been giving him every morning for months." Samuel took it with trembling hands, read the label. His face went white. "Optic nerve sedation." His voice was barely audible. This isn't for blindness." "No," Angela said quietly. "It's not." She pulled out her notebook, showed him the pages, the times, the patterns, the responses. Every morning after the drops, he disappears. For 6 hours, he's completely unresponsive. Then, when it wears off, he comes back. He tracks light. He turns toward sound. He reaches for things. Samuel stared at the pages, his jaw tight. "Someone has been keeping him blind," Angela whispered. "On purpose." Samuel's hands started shaking. "Who would do this? Why?" "I don't know, but we need to find out." They moved to Samuel's study. He pulled Jordan's medical file from a locked cabinet. Every report, every scan, every prescription, all signed by Dr. Helena Crane. Angela grabbed her phone, typed the name. Her face changed. "Mr. Harmon." She turned the screen toward him. "Dr. Helena Crane, medical license suspended 18 months ago, pending investigation for unauthorized experimental treatments on minors." Samuel felt the room tilt. "Experimental treatments," he read further. "Conducting research under the guise of therapy. Multiple complaints filed." Angela kept scrolling. Found research papers published under Crane's name. Induced visual deprivation studies in controlled infant populations. Optic development delays, a longitudinal study of suppressed visual response. Samuel's stomach turned. She was studying him. Angela clicked on the paper, scrolled to the data section. "Look at the dates. Subject J.H. Birth date matched Jordan's. Test intervals matched his appointments." Samuel grabbed the original diagnosis file, flipped to the back. There, in Dr. Crane's handwriting, were notes he'd never seen before. Subject J. Ideal candidate. Father incapacitated by grief, no maternal oversight, affluent household equals controlled environment, initiate optic protocol immediately, daily dosage critical to maintain visual suppression, document responses monthly for longitudinal data. Samuel read it 3 times. His hands crushed the paper. "She targeted us." His voice was hollow. "She saw Victoria die, saw me fall apart,
and she used it. Angela placed her hand over his. She won't anymore. Samuel looked at Jordan, asleep in his arms now, his face peaceful. Then he looked at Angela. His voice dropped to something cold, determined. I want her destroyed. What Samuel didn't know yet was that Dr. Crane wasn't working alone, and the people protecting her were more powerful than he could imagine. The next morning, Samuel walked into Dr. Helena Crane's office with Jordan in his arms and Angela beside him. Dr. Crane looked up from her desk, smiled that professional smile. Mr. Harmon, I wasn't expecting. Stand up. Her smile faltered. Samuel's voice was quiet, deadly. I said, stand up. She stood slowly, confusion crossing her face. Is something wrong? Samuel stepped forward, held Jordan up so she could see his face clearly. Look at him. Jordan's bright blue eyes locked onto Dr. Crane, tracking, aware, seeing. Her face went pale. You told me my son was blind, Samuel said. You told me his optic nerves didn't develop. You told me he'd never see anything. Mr. Harmon, He can see, Samuel's voice cracked. He's always been able to see. You just made sure no one knew it. Dr. Crane's hands gripped the edge of her desk. Angela stepped forward, phone in hand. Optic solution, expired medication, administered daily to suppress his visual response. Your research papers cite subject JH. Dates match his birth, his appointments, everything. You can't prove. The medical board already has copies, Angela said calmly. So does his lawyer, so does the district attorney. Dr. Crane's mask shattered, her breathing quickened. Samuel leaned in close. You saw my wife die. You saw me broken, and you used my grief to turn my son into your research project. His voice dropped to a whisper. Now watch what I do with mine. The lawsuit moved fast. Medical fraud, child endangerment, unauthorized human experimentation. Other families came forward. 4 more children, same medication, same lies, same doctor. The trial lasted 3 days. Angela testified about the patterns she documented. Medical experts explained how optics suppressed visual function. Prosecutors presented Dr. Crane's research papers, her revoked license, her handwritten notes. The jury took 2 hours, guilty on all counts. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Samuel stood on the steps, Jordan in his arms, Angela beside him. Jordan looked around at everything, faces, cameras, light, his eyes wide with wonder. Samuel spoke into the microphones, his voice steady. 6 months ago, a doctor told me my son would never see. She didn't just lie, she made it true. She poisoned an infant to create the blindness she claimed to diagnose. His voice caught. But truth doesn't stay buried. My son can see. He's always been able to see. He looked at Angela, and because of one woman who refused to look away, he's free. A reporter called out, "What's next for your family?" Samuel looked at Jordan, then at Angela, then back at the camera. We're going home. We're going to teach my son about light. That night, Samuel stood in the nursery, the room Victoria had painted in blues and yellows. Jordan sat on his lap, awake, looking at everything. Samuel held up a small wooden block. Red. Jordan grabbed it, studied it, smiled. That's red, buddy, Samuel whispered. Your mom loved red. Jordan looked up at his father's face, and for the first time, Samuel saw his son truly see him. Angela appeared in the doorway. Samuel reached out his hand. She took it. Thank you, he whispered. You don't thank family. Samuel pulled her close, Jordan between them. Outside, the fog began to lift. And inside that house, once a tomb, once a place of silence and grief, something new was beginning. But the deepest healing was still to come. 3 months later, the house looked different now. Every curtain open, every window gleaming. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, painting everything gold. Samuel stood in the kitchen making breakfast, something he hadn't done in over a year. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. From the nursery, he heard laughter. He walked down the hall and stopped in the doorway. Angela sat on the floor with Jordan in her lap, 9 months old now, bright-eyed, curious, alive. She held up a red block. "What color is this, sweetheart?" Jordan grabbed it, studied it, held it up to the light. "That's red," Angela whispered. "Red like love." Jordan babbled, reaching for another block, blue this time. Samuel smiled. "What are we learning today?" Angela looked up. "Today we're learning about sky." Samuel sat down beside them, took the blue block, held it toward the window. "See that, buddy? That's the sky your mom loved." His voice softened. "She used to sit right here in this room she painted for you. She'd watch the fog and tell me all the things she'd show you one day." He paused, looking at the walls, those soft blues and yellows Victoria had chosen. "She'd be so happy you can see them." Angela rested her head on his shoulder. Over the past 3 months, something had shifted between them. They weren't just employer and employee anymore, not just allies in a fight for justice. They were family. Jordan pointed at the window, making sounds, reaching toward the light. Everything was new to him. Everything was wonder. Samuel kissed the top of Jordan's head, then Angela's. "I never thanked you properly," he said quietly, "for seeing what I couldn't, for fighting when I didn't know how." Angela smiled. "You don't thank family." Samuel pulled them both close. For the first time in a year, he felt whole, not because the pain was gone, Victoria's absence still ached, but because he'd learned something grief had tried to steal from him. Hope doesn't die, it just waits, and sometimes God sends it back through people who refuse to look away. Outside, the fog lifted completely. Pure sunlight flooded the estate. Jordan laughed, a bright, beautiful sound that filled every corner of that house. Samuel closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone in particular, just up, because he knew now, deep in his soul, Victoria hadn't left them alone. She had sent them exactly who they needed. Angela kissed Jordan's forehead, then looked at Samuel. Her eyes said everything words couldn't. "We're gonna be okay." And they were. The house that had been a tomb was a home again. The father who'd lost hope had found it. The son who'd been stolen from had been set free, and the woman who'd spent her whole life invisible had finally been seen. 3 broken people, 1 quiet miracle, and a light that refused to go out.